your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Rays podcast. And Ulises, today we have a very special guest, and that is Cody Decker, who has done something that I think 99.99% of the populace out there has not done, and that is play professional baseball and get paid for it. Cody, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's a dream come true to be on this podcast with both of you two gentlemen. And I'm looking at your both setups, and one of you did do a lovely squaring setup job with some hats and all that. And the other one kind of just background all over the place. Blinds, weird.
I love this because I did actually take a long time figuring out what I wanted my space to look like. So thank you for noticing, Cody. That means you know what that means, because I have the better background, Kevin. That means that I get props on the first question.
That you do indeed. You can take it away for sure.
So let's start it with my favorite thing. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the Venezuelan World Baseball Classic hat. Mm-hmm. So that, of course, will be my first question. I love international competitions. I breathe and sweat for them. As a fan, you actually got the opportunity to represent Team Israel a couple of times in your career. How can we amp up such a fantastic international competition like the World Baseball Classic to even better levels than MLB it's doing right now?
Well, you know, I think Major League Baseball's done a very good job with the World Baseball Classic. I think it's got a lot of kinks that still need to be worked out. I mean, keep in mind, they've only done, 4 of them so far?
Something like that. Yeah. It's relatively new.
Yeah, it's a still relatively new thing, especially if they're treating it like the World Cup and how they've been doing it. It's exciting. And honestly, to this day, that last World Baseball Classic is one of the most exciting baseball experiences I've ever not only been a part of as a player, but as a fan watching it. You know, when we got knocked out, watching Adam Jones rob Manny Machado in San Diego is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It was just the entire Puerto Rican team was just pure joy to watch. Like every single game, you were watching something spectacular taking place. I think Major League Baseball, to their credit, has done an incredible job with the World Baseball Classic in that the first go around didn't really generated interest, but I wouldn't say it generated a lot of fanfare. The second one, I thought it built a little bit more. But the one where I was playing for Israel in 2017, man, I played in the Tokyo Dome in front of a sold-out Tokyo Dome against Japan. I have never been in a louder place in my life. It was exciting. It was fun. And it was cool. And I love international baseball. I think it brings a lot of different players. And here's the thing. The other things that fans don't realize, just how good baseball is throughout the world. I think we're a little arrogant in our American ways that we think that we just own baseball. Japan is so much better at baseball than us. It's crazy. Venezuela, like you mentioned, man, Venezuelan baseball is incredible. I played in the Venezuelan Winter League one year. Great baseball down there. Mexican leagues, amazing baseball down in Mexico. It's just a different style of play. So when you get to see the styles of play clashing against each other, it's not necessarily that one's better than the other. It's just when you're an American player and you haven't seen a Japanese pitcher who's messing with your timing, doing a different type of leg kick or a different type of timing mechanism, it's weird and it takes adjusting to. I mean, it was exceedingly fun, and I hope fans get to enjoy a little bit more of that. You know, how can Major League Baseball capitalize on it or improve on it? I'm not sure if they can improve on the WBC itself, other than just keep engaging fan engagement. And, you know, I think the bigger problems with Major League Baseball aren't so much about that, but more about things like making baseball a little bit more accessible to youth right now. I think that is the bigger problem for Major League Baseball. But as far as international play, I've always had this dream that will never, ever happen. And you would dig it and you would dig it. But here's the truth. Most fans and baseball would never do it. Major League Baseball, the World Series is not the World Series. The World Series is just the winner of the MLB Major League season. And there are there's a lot of professional leagues throughout the world that are playing at the same time and having playoffs taking place at the same time. Japan, Korea, Mexico. God, who else? Who else is playing at that exact? Well, whatever other summer leagues that are taking place. Take the winner of all those leagues and put them together and give me an international competition, and that should be the World Series. That being said, it's never, ever going to happen, but God, would it be sweet.
Oh, my. Yeah, it would be like the Champions League in soccer. You know, you get the best. That would be terrific.
Would be exactly the Champions League, but for baseball. I mean, it would be the coolest thing in the world. How cool would it be to see the Nippon Ham Fighters taking on the Atlanta Braves on like November 3rd for the actual World Series.
Yes, that's always actually kind of bothered me. The moniker that we give American sports league championship teams, the world champions moniker. You know, the Tampa Bay Bucks, the world champions. And it's like, well, I don't remember them beating Italy. So, you know, like that moniker has always bothered me.
Well, I think it's more Major League Baseball's, plan of global domination. And it's not just baseball, NFL as well. You know, we've seen a ton of games being played in London for the last several years. You know for a fact that NFL is coming to London. You know for a fact that they're going to eventually, hopefully, I think their goal is to create a full division out there in Europe. So I think NFL Europe was, in fact, the first try into getting that going. Now I think the plan eventually is to spread throughout other countries. Major League Baseball is not afraid to do that as well. They've already done it into Canada. There's been a lot of talk into Puerto Rico or into Mexico. I think the goal ultimately at the end of the day is to make it a global league. The problem is for it to become a global league, we're talking 50 to 100 years it's going to take for that to happen.
Right.
Certainly. Cody, you also not too long ago made national headlines for speaking up and speaking out against anti-Semitism within baseball. Why do you think anti-Semitism is so rampant in Major League Baseball and the sport in general?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily entirely about Major League Baseball. You know,
Okay.
I think Major League Baseball has its issues, but I don't think they're inherently anti-Semitic by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's just there is I wouldn't say in just baseball. I'd say in all sports and quite frankly all throughout the country, there is a severe lack of education when it comes to what a Jewish person even is. Apparently, I heard this as recently as 2 weeks ago. Somebody actually accused me of running the world, of which I can't even handle my finances. Like, what are you talking about? It's the weirdest thing. So, the issue is more education, in my opinion. I'm someone who grew up in Southern California. I grew up in Santa Monica, California. It's a very, vibrant and rich community, a very large Jewish community. I went to a school that was very, very, very diverse. I had must have been 70% Mexican, 25% white, 25% black. It was very, very diverse. And this is what I grew up around. And this is what was normal to me. And once I got to professional baseball, I'm like, oh, this is not normal to everyone. You didn't grow up in a heavy Mexican community where it's very normal. You didn't grow up in a Jewish community where it's just normal. And then, I go play in somewhere like Frisco, Texas, in Double-A when I was playing for San Antonio, and I'm getting, anti-Semitic slurs thrown at me because that day there was an article written about me and Nathan Fryman, who was also Jewish. We were teammates in Double-A San Antonio, and they wrote an article saying the greatest Jewish power hitting duo in Major League and baseball history is together in San Antonio. Of which we laughed, and then we started doing some research, and it was true. We were the greatest power hitting Jewish duo in the history of professional baseball. We were the only power hitting Jewish duo in the history of professional baseball. But it was a very funny article, and he and I got a kick out of it. And that night we're playing in Frisco, Texas, and there's just this drunk line of frat boys who really found it interesting that Nate and I were Jewish and just wouldn't let up. And I mean, every slur you can come up with. I almost jumped into the stands, like security had to get involved. The Frisco Rough Riders, I mean, it wasn't their fault. They eventually ejected the guys from the stadium, but they were extremely apologetic. And I think at that time, I mean, it's a Double-A park on a Tuesday night. There's only a few thousand people there, and these row of guys yelling anti-Semitic slurs. I don't think they'd ever dealt with that ever, and I don't think they knew what to do. So it lasted a lot longer than I think they intended it for. But they eventually got them out of there. But it's just one of those things like, man, what are you going to do? How do these people not understand that there is quite literally no difference between us? But, because my mom's maiden name is Cohen, that's a problem. And it's very strange to me. I think the other things that are strange in baseball, if you've heard of Sunday Chapel, Major League Baseball provides Sunday Chapel. I think it's a very good thing to provide. I have yet to see a Saturday temple or synagogue ever even mentioned. But then again, there aren't a whole lot of Jewish players in baseball. It is a very, I don't say unfortunately, it's not unfortunate. It's a very Christian sport. There's a lot of Christians in the game, and that's not anything for better or worse. It's just kind of how the things have shaken out.
What is the most wild example of anti-Semitism you encountered within the clubhouse?
The things in the clubhouse have always been fine. This doesn't look like I'm a really big guy. No one says anything to me. It's not a good move. But jokes are fine. Like, you're friends with teammates, you're friends. You can make
Right.
jokes with each
Right.
other. It's a different dichotomy in the clubhouse. I think the more awkward things were other people coming in. I mentioned Sunday Chapel. There was one time where my manager had to get involved because a chaplain wouldn't leave me alone. He was desperate to convert me. He's like, "Oh, why don't you come to chapel?" I'm like, I'm good. I'm Jewish, but I do appreciate the offer. He's like, "Oh no, you don't have to be Christian." I'm like, are you reading what book is that? Is that the New or Old Testament? It's like, new. I'm like, not really well.
There we go.
And he just goes like, "Well, Cody, it's not about that." I'm like, I understand that, but please, for the love of God, leave me alone. I don't want to go to chapel. And then after 20 minutes, my manager had to come out and actually, hey, leave him alone. He's not going to chapel. The guy is Jewish. It was things like that where it's just like, dude, leave me alone with this. Like, I don't. It's a weird thing. Like, people can't read the room, but it's because some of them don't understand. Most people do. I mean, it's not like 80%. It's like a very small 4% occasionally pop in with a weird sentence or a weird comment, or they'll say something like, it's always funny because it's a part of lexicon in any sport. Somebody's like, "Oh man, you're cheap, man. Why'd you Jew me in that?" And I'm just sitting there like, "What's that?" And they're like, "Oh, it's just like, I know it is, but yeah, knock that off."
Yeah. Going from something that maybe not a lot of people understand to something a lot of people understand is, Kevin calls it anti-social media. Those videos on anti-social media that gives us all a smile is seeing a baseball player get their dream come true and be told, "Hey, you're going to the big leagues, kid." Can you take us back to that moment, where you were in a state of mind? Who told you? What were your first thoughts? Who was your first call? Can you take us all through that, probably never forgettable memory of yours?
One of the greatest moments of my life, and I think there's a full story that does require a decent amount of context. So allow me to paint the full picture for you, and we'll get going. At this point, I've been playing for the San Diego Padres for 7 years. I have every hitting record they have in the minor leagues, their RBI record, total bases record, home run, everything that you can put down, I had. Unfortunately, during my time with the Padres, and this is no fault of their own, I think there were a lot of fans who are always saying, "What's wrong with Cody? Why doesn't he ever get a chance to get called up at the time?" But it wasn't necessarily the Padres' fault, and here's why. I was with them for 7 seasons. Through that time, I had 5 different general managers, 3 of which that came in had no idea who I was each time they came in. So I just kept getting pushed further down the totem pole every single time a new GM came in. So every time I started ingratiating myself to said GM, they would either leave or get fired. And then a new guy came in who didn't know me. And then I had to start all over again. And by the time I got them to like me, they quit or they got fired. And it just happened over and over again to the point where I'm in AAA. And now I've been in AAA for 4 years. And I haven't got an opportunity. And now the new GM, AJ Preller, comes in. And AJ's a very good guy and a very smart guy. And he just looks at it like he just got there right when September call-ups are coming up. And he decides he's not going to call me up. But he doesn't know me. He's brand new to the job. So it's not really on him to call me up at that exact moment. He had to take a look at the whole organization and look at the bigger picture. He can't just take care of one AAA guy. And I understand that. The next year, he started to like me a little bit more, and obviously they gave me the opportunity. But it took 7 full years living in my car, every possible thing. And there were a lot of very, very dark times during that time. Now that you have the full set of things taking place. Oh, I've also asked for my release at this point 4 separate times, all of which have been horrifically said no.
Okay.
To which I'm like, please let me go so I can maybe go make money. And they're like, no.
We're not having that.
But it was... by the way, I can't stress this enough. I love the Padres. They're great people. But it was just bad timing for me with the pods that whole time. So it goes on. I'm a AAA All-Star in 2015. It's my last year of my contract. We go to playoffs in the last month of the season. My AAA manager goes up to the big leagues, and I'm still in AAA. And he's managing in the big leagues, Pat Murphy. And I have a new manager who I'm not getting along with very well. And he stops playing me almost entirely. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Then finally, the playoffs end. And the last game ends, and I'm sitting there in my locker. I'm like, well, it's the last game as a Padre. If I'm not called up tonight, I guess I'm done, because it's the end of my contract. It's been 7 years. At this point, I'm 28 years old. I know what perception is. Everyone's going to look at my numbers like, well, every number here says he should be a big leaguer, but he's not in the big leagues. Must be something wrong with this guy. I'm like, this is going to be a nightmarish offseason. I think I'm done. So I'm like sitting there going through all these thoughts in my head after this playoff game that I just lost to the Astros AAA affiliate, which was the Fresno Grizzlies, which next year that team was exactly the Houston Astros. But they were, it was a tough night. And, realized I'm packing up my bags and grab my stuff and I'm going to take my flight in the morning. I called my girlfriend at the time and it was a tearful phone call. And I'm just saying, I think I'm going to retire. 28 years old, 7 years, no opportunities. It's just, quite frankly, I was broke, like beyond broke. And it was almost to the point where it was like kind of breaking my back a little bit. I couldn't afford to play baseball anymore. Yeah. So I get in my flight the next morning and I fly home, and it was, it was okay. I was starting to feel a little bit better about it. I'm like, maybe I'll, the off season's going to hit. I'll be a free agent in 25 days. Maybe I'll get some calls. We'll feel it out and I'll figure it out. But I was still very, very not thrilled. Quick little addition to the story of my background. I was trained by a guy named Reggie Smith. Reggie Smith was, 20-year big leaguer, played for the Red Sox. He's my mentor. Reggie was a guy who I was very lucky to grow up hitting with. I learned just about everything from this guy. And he was, at the time, the Dodgers hitting coach. And Reggie seems to know everything, even though he's been out of the professional game for a while. It was very cool last year. Dave Roberts brought him on as the hitting coach for the All-Star game, which was pretty sweet. But, Reggie and I at this point hadn't really talked much. So I land, back to the story, I land in LAX with my bags. And, before I left, the night before, I'd sent a text to a guy named Sam Gainey. Sam Gainey was the head of player development for the San Diego Padres. And Sam was a very nice guy. It was his first year, and he's like 29 years old at the time. We're the same age. And we kind of bonded on that because he dug me because he's checking all my stats. And just like, he's like, man, you've really kind of worn it, huh? I'm like, yeah, a little bit. But he was young and he was kind of new to he was kind of in over his head a little bit at first, and had to grow into the role, which he did very well, obviously. And but I remember I sent Sam a text that night after the game, and after I realized they're not calling me up, I just sent him a text. I'm like, hey Sam, just want to say thank you for everything in the year. You're going to be amazing at this job, and I look forward to everything you guys do with the Padres. Take care. It was just a nice text. And then I got a phone call from him when I landed at a baggage claim. I was just sitting there at a baggage claim, waiting for my bag, still definitely feeling it. But see Sam, and I figure he's calling me to thank me for the tax. I'm like, hey Sam, what's going on? He's like, Cody, did you land at LAX? I said, yes, I did. He's like, good, man. I just want you to know like how much you actually meant to this organization over these years. I know I've only been here for a year. And your text last night to me meant the world to me. I'm like, oh dude, thanks. I meant it. It was a very, very lovely conversation. And then he just takes a pause. He's like, well, it really upsets me that I'm the one calling you, because there are people in this organization you've known for nearly a decade that you're very close with. But, I feel like you and I have become close enough. I really wanted to call you and tell you need to get on a flight, and the team needs you in Arizona. You're going to be there tonight. I just said, He's like, you're going to the big leagues, Cody. And I just stopped. I'm like, and I don't know what happened. I just had a moment where everything stopped. Like everything just froze, and I paused, and I had a moment of realization, because if you know my background, you know for a fact that I mess with people very, very harshly. I convince players things about themselves that they don't realize, or I convince a player that his teammate is deaf for a month, and we have fun with that, or I lock a player in the bathroom for about 6 hours, or I'll fill up a guy, or I'll take a guy's locker and put it in the middle of the field. Perfectly set up the way he said. I did that twice. You have no idea how difficult that was. Removing a locker from the locker room and taking and putting it on the pitcher's mound took me hours, but it was worth it. Worth it. So I took a pause and I just said, Sam, listen, I am beyond thrilled if this is true, but you know that I do a lot of pranks. And if this is somebody getting back at me, one, brilliant, top notch. Two, I am not in a good mental state. This one might push me over the edge. So please tell me if this is true or not. He started laughing. He's like, it's 100% true, Cody. You're going to the big leagues. And I just kind of paused for a sec and I thanked them. Like, I don't remember the conversation after that. Truthfully, I think I just probably went, thank you. Oh my God, thank you. I got to call. What do I do? Probably something like that.
Yeah.
And then my girlfriend was picking me up. My wife now, and she was heartbroken the night before for me. She was crying on the phone with me. It was a tough night, and she picks me up, and I didn't know what to do. The moment I hung up the phone with Sam Gainey, my phone pings, and it's Reggie Smith. Just literally hung up the phone, ping, look at my phone. Reggie Smith says, "Congratulations, it's been a long time coming. You belong in the big leagues." And I just stopped and I said, "I literally just found out 10 seconds ago. How do you know this?" And he's like, "No one knows." And he just responds, "I know everything." My girlfriend picks me up at the time. My wife picks me up, and she just gets out of the bag. She gets out of the car, helps me with my bags, and she looks like she's getting ready to handle me with serious kid gloves. And I just looked at her, and I'm not smiling because I'm in shock. And I just said, "I'm going to the big leagues." And she said, "What?" I said, "I'm going to the big leagues. I just got off the phone." And she just started crying. She just jumped. It was like a movie scene. Jumped up on my arm. It was amazing. I had some time, so I was able to go to Santa Monica from LAX to see my folks and tell them that I'm going to the big leagues. The problem was I filmed it and I wanted to post it. They were at their pool. My dad's body looks like E.T. when he's dying at the lake. I just didn't feel comfortable putting that on social medias. It was an amazing day. That 24 hours was one of the coolest 24 hours I could have ever had. I'll forever be in debt to the San Diego Padres for it. No matter what, I will root for the Padres for the rest of my life, no matter what. They're the organization that drafted me. They're the organization that gave me, it wasn't much of an opportunity. Hell, I got one start, didn't really do anything. But I got to go to the big leagues. I got to say that I'm a big leaguer. I got to, be one of 20,000 ever. And I'm really proud of that. I would have loved a better opportunity. I would have loved more shots up there. I would have loved more at bats. I would have loved to have started more than one game. Because I've never been, at that point, I'd never been a spot time player. I've never pinch hit in my life. I had no idea what I was doing. I was a guy that gets 4 at bats every day, and that's how you play. That wasn't the role that I was up there. I would show up and they were like, "You're not," I wouldn't play for 2 weeks. Then I'd have it at bat against Madison Bumgarner while he's throwing a no-hitter in the 8th inning. And that is actually true. Pat Murphy calls me, "Hey, Deck, when was the last at bat you had?" I said, "A week and a half ago." He's like, "Well, Bumgarner's got a no-hitter in the 8th. Good luck." Pats me on the shoulder. I'm like, "All right." I haven't picked up a bat in a while. And it was by the way, that's one of the at-bats in my entire life that I remember every single pitch. Drives me nuts, that at-bat. But yeah, it was just, not the opportunity I wanted, but the experience. And, you're kind of put into a very elite club with that. People talk about Hall of Famers being an elite club. That's an elite of an elite of an elite of an elite of an elite. Getting to the major leagues is an extraordinarily small club. And I'm very proud that I got that opportunity, especially nowadays and how impossible it is to get to the major leagues now.
Yeah, I want to dissect though on the Bumgarner. You say you remember that
every single pitch, every moment, every mindset, everything. I remember everything about that at bat.
So before you give us a play-by-play of how that at bat went, I want you to tell me they give you the news. Hey, grab a bat. What do you do in that moment? Do you go, "Crap, where's the iPad? Video room"?
No, I've luckily been watching the game, and I know what he has. And I've faced Madison Bumgarner at this point many times, and I've had some actually decent success off of him. Spring training games and minor leagues. Madison Bumgarner is a hell of a pitcher. He just is. And he's a very difficult pitcher. And even when his velocity's down, he's a difficult pitcher to face because of his arm angle, how far he throws across his body, how far he steps across his body. It's almost like you're getting a pitch from the second baseman. It's a very tough angle to hit. Luckily, I'm pretty good against lefties. So I've always actually had success. But he is very, very good. And his fastball, the perception of the speed of his fastball is different than the actual velocity because of the spin rate, and especially back then when he was with the San Francisco Giants. So my first pitch, I'm up there, Bumgarner's just K-ing guys left and right, getting outs. It's the 8th inning, and I go in there, and I remember the first pitch was a ball, and I'm like, okay, let's get on time with this fastball. Get ready for the fastball. Fastball, ball. Okay, 2-0. Might not give you a fastball. Let's get ready for this fastball. Fastball, ball. So I got a 3-0 count. Again, I haven't had an at-bat in over a week, and I'm just sitting there like, okay, 3-0 count. Well, I'm still technically a rookie, even though I'm like 3 years older than Madison. I can't swing 3-0 right now in the 8th inning of a no-hitter. I just can't. He's going to throw me a fastball right down the middle, and I'm not allowed to swing at it. Fastball right down the middle. I just step out. I will never see that pitch again.
Yeah. How do you?
I was just
the
sitting
goal.
there like, I hate unwritten rules. This is so stupid.
Yes.
Next pitch. I probably wouldn't have swung anyways, to be honest with you. But it's the fact that I wasn't allowed to that just drives me nuts.
Yes.
And then it's 3-1. Throws me another fastball. I was a little late because a part of me, and this is something that I never do, ever, and this is why this bat sticks in my head. I never get off the fastball. I never think about a single pitch but a fastball. Period. I can adjust to your off-speed pitches. You throw me a fastball while I'm sitting off-speed, I'm screwed. I have no chance in hell of ever catching up. Everybody throws 95 plus. You have any idea how hard it is to hit that speed? And so when you got that and you're sitting there and all of a sudden it's 3-1, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, he does have that slider, and he does know me, so maybe he will flip me that slider, but stay on the fastball. But I was just that one thought got me off the fastball just enough to where he throws me a fastball middle away. I foul it off as opposed to, I'm like, that ball should have been hit. All right, 3-2. And I'm at this point, and this is where I lost sleep over this at bat. I never get off the fastball. My thought at the box was, I was thinking, like, how do you pinch hit? You look for pitches, and Mark Kotze was trying to help me, but he wasn't really much of a pinch hitter in his career as much as he was just a good ball player. Mm-hmm. So pinch hitting, especially at the big league level, is tricky. So I'm sitting here trying to dissect and analyze what this guy's going to do, as opposed to just having my at bat and focusing on my at bat. I'm thinking, okay, 3-2. He's throwing me 5 fastballs. There's no way in hell he's not throwing me he's not throwing me a breaking ball. Get ready for this slider. He's going to flip me a slider. Fastball. Foul tipped it into the glove. Strike 3. I have thought about that at bat so much over the years, just because it's the only at bat in my career I got off the fastball on a very hittable fastball that I know of for a fact I could have absolutely destroyed, but I got on the off-speed pitch because I overthought the game. I don't know why I was giving pitchers in the big leagues so much credit. Like, I know Madison Bumgarner's an amazing pitcher. I know what he can do. Why am I giving all this credit that he's a different guy all of a sudden? I faced him a month ago in AAA. Like, he's not a different guy. Yeah. And I just decided to go about it differently because I was getting a lot of information. Hey, pinch hitting, got to do this, and this, and this. So it was a lot of cooks in the kitchen for every single at bat, and it became difficult. And it was just, I didn't get very many opportunities, so I never got to get into a flow. And that sounds like an excuse, but it might be. There might be a little bit of an excuse in there. But honestly, it was tricky to go do a role in the big leagues that you've never done. I had some amazing coaches that were there. I mean, Dave Roberts was my bench coach. Dave Roberts, who I've known for a long time, just unbelievable human being. Mark Kotze, now the manager of the A's, he was our hitting coach, and God, I couldn't love Mark Kotze more if I tried. I was a very spoiled guy in this game.
Cody, how much more of an opportunity do you think you would have needed to prove yourself at the big league level? Like, it just seems like you didn't really get a fair shake during your career. And you had, your minor league career is decorated with the home runs, the RBIs, the OPS, all that stuff is great. Like, what kind of career do you think you could have if it was like, hey, give me 200 at-bats, 300 at-bats, give me a full season of opportunities here?
In my opinion,
mm-hmm.
I'd still be there. I'd still be playing.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I'm in better shape right now than I was 2 years ago when I retired. No, it's just, I think I would have played a long time. I don't think they would have had to rip the jersey off me. And the reason why I decided to hang them up when I did was because they kind of already did. I was at the point where I was in AAA and was playing for the Diamondbacks, and By the way, what a wonderful organization, the Diamondbacks. What an incredible organization they are. But the D-backs, they were very upfront with me. Like, and when I say upfront with me, I mean exceedingly upfront with me, which in a career like baseball, even though it sucked to hear it, it was very refreshing to be told, hey, no matter what you do, we're probably not going to call you up. And this was my second year with them. Me signing with them, while I'm sitting there getting ready to sign the contract, they flew me in to sign the contract. It was a very odd thing. This has never happened. The offseason comes. I played with them in 2018. They call me, say, hey, we want you to come back. Would you like to sign back? I said, yes. He's like, we need a little pay bump. We need to fly into Arizona to sign the contract, to which I'm like, why? I just email it to me and I'll sign it. I'm like, no, we're going to fly in. And I'm like, wow, this is a big deal. And then we're going to fly out. I'm like, you're going to fly me in Southwest Airlines to sign the and you're just going to fly me back to, okay, sure. All right, I'll do that. So that's what I did. But I remember sitting down signing that and they said, we want to talk to you also. I said, okay. So I was wondering what they were doing. I thought they were maybe going to talk to me about, big league invite, or if they wanted to start moving me into a manager job, because they've been taught, I've been offered a lot of manager jobs at that point, and people have been trying to get me out off the field, but they were still very willing to let me keep playing because I put up numbers.
Yeah.
They just basically said, listen, no matter what, you're not going to get to the big leagues here this year. Like, I don't think there's a possibility. I said, really? And I'm like, pen and paper. I'm like, well, what am I doing? Like, we need you to mentor our guys. We need you to Crash Davis this. I said, okay. I said, well, I agree. I liked the pay bump. So I was just like, listen, if I sign, will you guys help me find a different job in the big leagues? He's like, if anyone calls you and gives you a better offer to go play there, we will make sure. And my contract was guaranteed. So that was a good, they took care of me. They gave me a guaranteed contract. They said they were going to try and find me a spot elsewhere if something came up. And the big thing was, and they were going to help me try to sell me to Japan. That was the big thing. I wanted to go play in Japan or Korea. And they were going to try and help with that. But there is a massive caveat to that. It requires at-bats. If I'm not playing every day, they're not gonna get me. And unfortunately, I was not playing every day. And they also said there's a possibility we're not going to be able to get you the at-bats. And I understood that going in. And I appreciate the honesty, and it came to the point where I wasn't getting the at-bats. It came to the point where I was getting put on the phantom DL with injuries I didn't have. And I'm just like, listen, I'm 32. I got 24-year-old teammates calling me Pops. I'm homering once every 7 at-bats, but it seems to be nothing I can do. So I had an offer to get into radio, get into TV. I had another offer to take over a baseball and softball nonprofit in a city that I really loved, which was El Paso, Texas, where I played AAA for the Padres for a couple of years, and I kind of fell in love with that city. And, I just felt like it was time. There's no way, there's nothing, every one of my goals I can't accomplish. It wasn't that I wasn't capable. It was just, it wasn't possible, sadly, anymore. I couldn't get to the big leagues because I wasn't going to get the at-bats, and I couldn't get to Japan or Asia because I wasn't going to get the at-bats. So I decided to hang them up, and I think it was the right time. I have had offers to go back and play, and I have turned them down, and because I, quite frankly, don't need any more 3A home runs.
Taking all those clubs you were a part of, and the ones you haven't mentioned yet, what was one thing that you absolutely loved that one organization did for their players that maybe other ones didn't do?
Red Sox first, and then the Diamondbacks, and that was taking care of their players' mental health.
Okay.
Massive. They care about it a lot, and they were the only 2 organizations that I played for that even mentioned mental health. Wow. Especially the Red Sox. The Red Sox had many mental prep coaches, therapists, and when I went to the Red Sox, I was in personally a very, very bad place. I'd gotten to the big leagues. I became a free agent, signed with the Royals, told I made the team, then told I didn't. Last second, I flew to Kansas City with the team, had to get in my car and drive to Omaha. I'm there. They tell me, hey, we got a prospect here that needs to play, so we kind of messed up, and we're going to try and trade you. They trade me to Colorado 2 weeks into the season, played for Colorado in AAA in Albuquerque. I played 14 games. Danny Descalso gets not hurt anymore. They send down, God, I can't remember which player they sent down. They sent down a first baseman.
Mhm.
I'm released. I'm out of job. I went from big leagues to making another team that I was really excited to make, to going down to AAA, to getting traded where I had to pack up this apartment that I just got and move to Albuquerque, get an apartment there, all while playing games, released, move my stuff back to Los Angeles. It was a crazy whirlwind 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whatever, I'll just get picked up. A month and a half goes by, no one will pick me up because getting released in like May 1st is like the worst time you could ever be released in baseball. There are no jobs available. Then finally, the end of June comes around, and Casey Jansen was a free agent, and I was a free agent, and we're both sitting there training every day at UCLA, and we both were talking to the Red Sox, and the scout came to watch us both work out. I was catching them, and then I was hitting, and then they signed us both. And while I was there, I was just playing. I was frightened at all times. Like, I wouldn't say it out loud, and my teammates wouldn't know, but me personally, every second on that field, I was terrified. Like, I couldn't stop my hands shaking. I didn't understand what was wrong with me. I thought I was just having like a mental breakdown. I would walk into the batter's box and my right hand wouldn't stop shaking, and I couldn't get to the bottom of it. I thought maybe I had a neurological issue. I thought, and it was just, I was terrified of striking out every single at bat because I was terrified of losing my job.
Yeah.
I was truly terrified after every at bat. I'm like, I'm gonna get fired and it's over. Like, if I get released again, it's done. So I couldn't play. I ended up playing okay. I hit 20 homers that year. I had 300 at bats total. I had, but I hit 45. I K'd a ton. I wasn't me, and I knew it. And I remember right when the season ended, I remember that last bus ride. I'm just sitting there looking out the window going like, this last 2 months was not how I played baseball. I don't know who this guy was. And the Red Sox recognized it, like almost 3 weeks in. They recognized it. The manager called me and he's like, hey, I want you to know you're not going anywhere. You are here for the rest of the year. I said, thank you. I actually needed to hear that. I actually started to tear up. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Sent in a mental coach, therapist, started talking with them, and they were extremely helpful. It wasn't that what the therapists or the mental coaches were amazing. They were very good, but it was more what mattered to me was that they actually cared. And that was something I wasn't used to. I'd never played for an organization that honestly cared about what I felt or thought. And that's not a knock on the Padres or the Royals or Rockies, although it's fine if you want to make it a knock on the Rockies. They suck. But I think the Red Sox, they truly cared about their players, all the way down to how they were taking care of meals for the minor. Like, they took care of their meals. They took care of their travel a little bit better. They really cared about their players. And at that point, I really hadn't experienced that. And I was very thankful for that, so much so that I really, really wanted to sign back, and I had a good offer to go back there, and somebody else talked me out of it, which I still haven't forgiven him for.
Of course.
But Pat Murphy convinced me to sign with the Brewers, even though it was half the money, and I didn't want to go. And they ended up releasing me in spring training. I signed up with the Mets.
Yeah.
It was just it was crazy how great they were. And when I got to the Diamondbacks, a lot of those Red Sox people, Hazen, now with the Diamondbacks, they brought that over, and they had the same thing, so much that they had a full department for it. And who was the head of that department? Daniel Bard, who is now the closer for the Colorado Rockies. He had retired, and he was the head of the thing. He was going through mental sessions with everybody in the morning. He was basically a therapist. He was retired. I remember we were sitting there. I'm there with him. We were with the Mets together the year before, and we're just sitting there like, God, so now I'm going to sit here and you're going to mental coach me? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, this is awesome. And then 2 years later, he's back in the big leagues. It's awesome. God, I love Daniel Bard. If you guys don't love Daniel Bard, there's something wrong with you.
Cody, I got to ask this. Why do the Rockies suck from your vantage point?
I didn't like their organization. I didn't like how they treated me. And I had some conversations that I, to this day, really piss me off. And quite frankly, personal. It's personal. How about that?
Okay.
It's personal, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's personal.
Understood. So they don't.
I normally am an open book, but I'm gonna leave. This is the one thing I'm gonna have to leave out.
Okay, that's fair enough. Fair enough. And as far as the mental health thing goes, is that something that gets discussed in the clubhouse at all, or is there still a lot of stigma surrounding that? Or kind of what's your take on that? I don't know how many players are dealing with some sort of mental health issue,
All of them.
but they're afraid to talk about it.
I would say it's, if not all of them, most of them.
Okay.
I don't think I've met a single player who doesn't have imposter syndrome, or at least a version of imposter syndrome. There's not a single guy that they all know they belong there, but there's a part of them that doesn't think they belong there. And that's every single player. I think that's probably every athlete. Honest to God, the ones that don't have that imposter syndrome are the actual crazy people. It's the those are the sociopaths of the game who truly think no matter what, they are God's gift to earth. And no, it's a game, and you're just very talented at the game. I think the mental health aspect is something that's been brought to the forefront over the last few years, and I think a lot of people have been brave enough to bring it out. But the thing is, it takes one person to say it, and four other guys going, "Yeah, me too. Oh my God, thank you." As recently as when I was in college, it was. Are we allowed to curse on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even as recently as when I was in college, it was all about, hey, don't be a pussy. That's athletics. Don't be a bitch. You got to be tough. You got to be strong. Yeah, to a degree, but at the end of the day, we are still people, and that's no athlete, no matter what type of mental training you put yourself through. There are a lot of stresses, especially when you're playing at the highest levels, and if you're a minor leaguer, especially because there's a pay gap issue that's involved, and yeah, it's. I think it's been talked about a lot more, but yeah, I think a lot of guys are still scared to talk about it. I mean, even my last year with the Padres, I was still not okay to talk about my personal feelings with anybody. It felt, I don't know, I felt like it wasn't worth somebody's time to deal with, and I could deal with it myself because I'd been dealing with myself for all these years. I don't know. It's a weird stigma. It's a weird thing. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of. I mean, I don't need to tell you how much ego is in professional sports. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of pride, and guys pride themselves on being the toughest and the mentally toughest. They don't want to seem like. I was watching. I have a. If you're a DVD fan. I had of course, the DVD for Predator. Now I had about like 4,000 DVDs. I still do. They're in a bunch of books over here to my left. I'm a movie junkie. I went to film school. But there's a Predator DVD where there's an interview with Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers, of course, Apollo Creed, former NFL player, Raider Nation, go Raiders. He talks about this group of guys, and in this movie, if you ever see Predator, it's about every who's who of tough guy in movies at the time. It's Carl Weathers, who is an ex-NFL player and jacked to the gills. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger, a former bodybuilder and is jacked to the gills. It's Jesse the Body Ventura, a former pro wrestler and at this point still jacked to the gills. Is it Bill Duke? I think it's Bill Duke, actor who you've seen in a ton of stuff, but he's an ex-Green Beret. And it's just everybody is tough in this movie in real life. So Carl Weathers talked about he would wake up at like 4 a.m., go run 2 miles and lift a ton before he'd even show up to set so he could look bigger than other guys. So when they could say, I'm like, man, did you lift this morning? He'd be like, no, this is all natural. And I'm like, God, just the ego on a movie set. That's every clubhouse you'll ever see. There's 5 conversations just like that always taking place. Guys trying to out-ego the other one. And that's just kind of sometimes the fun of a clubhouse. But sometimes that type of machismo activity could lead to, not being comfortable enough or, able to express when you're really struggling. Because, well, these guys aren't struggling. What's wrong with me? Well, they are struggling. They're just hiding it a little better than you.
I hear this a lot in the media and from the fan base. Clubhouse chemistry. Mm-hmm. How much weight do you put onto that, as far as it could go both ways, in the sense of you have a malcontent or a bad apple that, kind of ruins the mood for the entire season, or you have a guy like yourself who kind of livens things up? Like, how important is clubhouse chemistry to a successful season or not a successful season? Extremely,
but there is a caveat. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes talent does win out. I think there's a comfortable balance. I think there is going to be teams where you have that, that prima donna that
Right.
kind of is the bad apple. And then you have the other grouping of guys that could possibly pull together well enough that that guy doesn't really, that guy's attitude doesn't matter. Or it could be that he affects 4 other guys. And that's where you come into the problem. The phrase bad apple is one bad apple ruins the bunch.
Right.
The thing why I never liked the phrase bad apple in a clubhouse setting is because one bad apple doesn't necessarily infect the rest of the bunch, but a baseball player who has a bad attitude could easily affect the rest of the bunch. So it's more like a slow virus than it is a bad apple. But clubhouse chemistry, absolutely, it's extremely important. But at the end of the day, you're around these guys every day for 160 70 days, and I'm not even counting spring training. There are going to be issues. There's going to be fights. There's going to be disagreements. At the end of the day, though, if you guys are just on the same page on the field, good things can happen. I mean, sometimes fights need to happen. Sometimes a fight between players needs to happen for the whole team to kind of rally around it. And that does happen on occasions. And I just think it's a comfortable balance. You just got to know, it's the old phrase, know thyself. You got to know who you are, know who your players are, and your manager needs to be able to recognize that. Your manager needs to be able to put the players and the infrastructure in place that the players can even police themselves. I had one manager who used to refer it as shot callers. They're basically an extension of the coaching staff. Shot caller, shot caller. You got a problem, you go to them. They come to me.
Interesting. So, okay, when you talk about infighting within the clubhouse, are these actual fist fights at times, or just screaming matches, or sometimes a combination of both?
Sometimes a combination of both, sometimes one or the other. I mean, it happens. I've gotten to a fist fight or two with teammates. I've gotten to shouting matches with teammates. There is not a single teammate I can think of that I wouldn't hug right now if I saw them, including the ones that I fought. Like, we have to fight sometimes. There's a lot that takes place. It could be anything. It could be something as stupid as, hey, we're going to tip the bus driver. Everybody put money in and one guy refuses because he just doesn't want to give the bus driver $20 for driving us all season. And that caused a fight, an actual fist fight. It's things like that. I mean, it's at the end of the season, the dog days of August is affecting everybody, especially that clubhouse. And if that clubhouse, say that team's not playing very well, and guys are, say, losing their jobs, or guys just found out they're not going to go up, it gets to be a testy place sometimes. And it's important to realize that everybody in there is in the same boat. So how much do I put into clubhouse chemistry? A lot, like a lot. But is it the end all be all? No. The end all be all is you got to win. You got to score more runs than the other team. Clubhouse chemistry is not going to score your runs, but it certainly can help.
Wow. So now I know, again, you didn't have a super long time in the big leagues, but was there ever a fight or infighting within the clubhouse when you were with the Padres? Or
no. I mean, there was.
Okay.
I will say that particular team was the 2015 Padres. It was the AJ Preller's first year. They swung big, made a bunch of big trades, and there was a lot of excitement. And I think the only thing that was comparable to the excitement was the monumental and cataclysmic downfall of that team that season. Bud Black fired midway through the year. They brought in Matt Kemp and Craig Kimbrell and both Uptons, and it was a brand new team, and they did not play well together. And when I got up there, I got to say that team was not getting along very well. It was a long season. I think the press and the fans turned on them. The owner of the team at the time is even putting out some statements about certain players. It was an ugly situation. So I walked into a bit of, I wouldn't say a dumpster fire. These were all guys I knew and I was friends with. And they weren't the same guys they were 5 months ago in spring training, because it looked like that season had beaten them up a little bit. And it did. It was a tough clubhouse, but it was not, certainly wasn't the worst clubhouse I've ever been in. I've definitely seen worse, but it was, I'm a guy that's always put in a clubhouse to kind of help the clubhouse. At that point, I was a 28-year-old rookie. I couldn't walk up there and do anything, even though I was the same age, or quite frankly, older than 90% of the team, and had been in the organization longer than every one of them.
Wow. What about managers? How important, because we hear about, how much value does a manager make in a team winning and losing ball games? From your perspective, how important is a manager as far as the wins and losses go?
I'm going to give you an interesting perspective on this. They're very important. A manager is
Okay.
extremely important. I don't want to discount what every manager does. I do think there's a little bit of a misconception of what a manager does these days, because managing a game is not as difficult, I feel, as people are making it out to be. The rules are pretty much in place. All you really have to do to manage the game itself, more or less, you just got to manage the bullpen. And if you're in the National League, you have to handle a double switch every once in a while, which is not rocket science, guys. This is very easy stuff. Occasionally, you're going to call a hit and run or a bunt, and quite frankly, no, you're not, because that's not in the game anymore.
Yeah.
So managing the actual game, not as hard as people make it out to be. But the hard part is the collaborative effort beforehand. Breaking down the numbers, breaking down what you know about your players, knowing what you have, working with your front office, putting together a lineup. It used to be, this is your lineup every day. Now, based on the numbers, the projected lineup for best opportunity to win is this. Okay, now let's make adjustments. All right, you're working with about 5 different people. Your coaching staff, possibly a GM or an assistant GM, maybe a numbers guy. Depends on the organization. Or it could be an organization where the manager just is sitting in a room by himself. I don't think there are any teams like that anymore, but there might be. But it's more of a collaborative effort. So being a manager these days requires, one, that collaborative spirit. Two, it needs to be someone that could speak to the press and handle the press when things are both going bad, and more importantly, when things are going good, and more importantly, when things are going really bad. You need someone that can handle the players, not just them on the field. You need to be able to handle their egos and their everything off the field. You're handling quite a bit. A manager's job is a lot. And keep in mind, the manager also has to manage his staff as well. He needs to know what's happening at all times. So it is one hell of a difficult job. And here's something I think fans really need to realize. It is a thankless job. It is a stressful job that you're constantly being picked to death for things that, quite frankly, aren't remotely in a manager's control. Think of like Tony La Russa got a lot of flack last year for certain things, and some things he did that I think he deserved some flack for. Others I think were like, hey, come on, guys, let's slow down. We're going to get mad at him for putting in Craig Kimbrell right there. He's Craig Kimbrell. Anytime you throw in Craig Kimbrell, you have the best possible chance to win. The end. Sorry, Craig gave up 3 runs. That doesn't happen all the time. Why is that Tony La Russa's fault? It isn't. But people are like, well, why would you do that? Because he's Craig Kimbrell. That's why you would do it. I would have done it too, and so would have you. So it's just it's amazing how thankless that job is. But yeah, I think it's an extremely important job. I think it takes a certain type of mindset. I think you have to be it helps to be very smart, but it also helps to be extremely personable. You need to understand what those guys are going through, especially with the game these days. So much numbers based, and I think a lot of the humanity of the game is constantly being driven out, which is a sad thing. But I think it's going to go the other way. I think more humanity is going to be put back into the game. I think things always go in cycles. So much robotics right now, and then eventually start focusing back in with the human aspect again. It's just, there are a lot of balls in the air, to say the least, for a manager when it comes to managing any game, a major league game, a minor league game. Minor league game, you have to deal with prospects. You have to deal with, your players going up and down. You got to deal with, probably only 4 guys in your bullpen that night because the taxi squad has taken 2 of your guys. It's just, that's the game. And I do think there are more variables than I think people are giving credit for. There are an outrageous amount of things. It's not just writing the lineup and handling the bullpen. That is a part of it, but that is arguably one of the smaller parts.
Is that the biggest disconnect that fans have with the game, or is there something else that's like, from your perspective, where you're like, no, fans don't really understand this? Is it the Monday morning quarterbacking of a manager, or is it? I've talked to scouts before, and they say that it's unfair for fans to criticize any type of professional ball player because it's like they're the elite of the elite. Like, what is there something that you hear out there that's like, that's not really right, or that's not really correct, or that's not something that fans should be focusing on or saying?
Yeah, I feel that way whenever they talk about a certain player, like, this guy sucks. No, he doesn't. He's arguably one of the greatest who have ever done this ever. He's very good. That always drives me nuts. Toxic fandoms that turn on their players in certain ways. That always drives me nuts. Going after man, it's the money. We're about to see it right now because we're currently in a lockout, And we haven't seen it yet, but it's coming. We're going to see a lot of very stupid hot takes coming very soon where, oh man, these greedy players, I'd play for free. The I'd play for free crowd is about to come out. And it's going to be a nightmare dealing with those over and over again. Because again, for those people who always say greedy ball players, I'd play for free, understand that you are offering free labor and no one's taking you up on it. So just understand how good these people are at what they do. There are things about that drive me nuts. Yeah, but it is what it is. They're fans. Fan is short for fanatic. They're fanatical, and that's what they're going to be. And most of the time, I appreciate it. Some of the time, though, come on, guys, let's clean it up.
Right, certainly. So looking at the lockout a little bit, what is one outcome or one change that you'd like to see with the CBA if and when it does get inked and signed? What is like one major change that you like? This needs to happen in the next CBA.
They need to stop making rules that have nothing to do with pace of play and everything to do with handling guys' service time. I think it's just listen. It's not even my problem that they're making the rules. It's stop with what the rules are for. It's almost you're insulting our intelligence at this point by saying, oh yeah, every pitcher that comes in has to face 3 batters. That has nothing to do with pace of play. Nothing at all. You just eliminated the left-on-left matchup. You just killed the lefty specialist out of the bullpen. That is a very viable job. There's going to be a lot less guys that are going to be getting major league tenure now. It's already impossible to get to the big leagues. It's even more impossible to stay in the big leagues. And, changing the 40-man roster rules down to 26, that's drastic. It's going to be impossible to get to the big leagues. Average salary. We're hearing all these $300 million contracts. Great. Average salaries in Major League Baseball are down $4 million. That's the average salary. And that's with record contracts being signed left and right. It's because there's so many guys making Major League minimum because so many guys' time is getting. And here's the thing. I don't blame any team for handling the system that's in place. They're doing things according to the system that's best financially for themselves. You can't blame them for doing that. But the rules that are being put in place are very much favoring one side. And then you have the aspect of technology that's taking place. Major League, the Players Association a few years back were terrified of wearable technology. They're terrified of it. They didn't want ownership or teams getting their hands on advanced metrics of a person's body and there's certain phrases that get thrown into the lexicon that you'll hear every once in a while. Whenever you hear the phrase low heart rate guy, that's not by accident. That phrase has been put into baseball in these last few years for a very specific reason. It's not a real phrase. Have you ever heard somebody in your life refer to someone as a low heart rate guy?
No.
I heard it for the first time about 8 years ago in a baseball clubhouse, and then I'm like, that's not a phrase in the American lexicon. That I Googled it, couldn't find it. Like, who says that? And then come to find out teams want to know what your heart rate is so they can use it against you, possibly in arbitration. And I don't blame them for doing that. Why wouldn't you? Use everything you can. And the Players Association was so scared of wearable technology that I was laughing, going like, they don't need to put anything on us to do that. Like, you lost that battle. You lost that battle 2 years ago. There was radar exists. They can get anything they want off of us, and they did. They didn't need to put anything on players to get that information. They did it. So you also have to count in the aspect that gambling is coming to pro sports, specifically baseball. Sports gambling is going to change finances for all sports going forward, and it would behoove Major League Baseball and the Players Association to get together on this and work together to basically circumvent future controversies that could easily take place during this. So I think it's going to take them both putting away all egos and working together, because right now there's going to be more money put into baseball than there ever has been, ever. 2 years ago in 2019, Major League Baseball made record profits in revenue by $12.2 billion. That's going to look like pocket change in 10 years. And it's really up to Major League Baseball to work with the players and make sure all finances are handled properly.
Cody, you seem like you'd be a great fit as a coach, a manager, working somewhere in the front office. Do you see that role for yourself in some sense? I know you said you've been offered some of those positions, but is that ever a change that you really want to make, or it really have to be like a great organization and a great opportunity for you to do something, to do what you're not doing now?
I've had this conversation many times. I'm trying to find the best way to actually respond to that. Yes, is the first answer is yes.
Okay.
I've never been quiet that my dream job, even when I was playing, my dream job was to be a major league manager. I always wanted to be a manager. It's what I wanted to be. I remember I had this one conversation with Bud Black, who was my manager in San Diego, and Bud Black's a great guy. But one time, Buddy Black chewed me. God, he was pissed. He chewed my ass in a way that, like, I almost started laughing while he was doing it, because I'm like, I have never been yelled at like this in my life by a grown man. Like, I'm like, I wish I was recording. I was almost stunned. I was like, what the hell is happening? Really? Am I getting screamed at? This is awesome. I was mad, but it was just like, I have to let Buddy yell at me for a while. And he did, and it was awesome. It's one of my favorite stories. I'll tell you about it. But Buddy, Buddy was he was awesome. And I remember at the end of the conversation, it wasn't much of a conversation, but at the end of the bludgeoning that he was putting me through, he stopped and just said, he gave me a wonderful compliment. And it's amazing, after the entire yelling, that's the thing I took away from it, because I'm an ego. He said, listen, Cody. Listen, Cody. There are not a lot of smart baseball players. You're one of the few of them. In 20 years, if you want my job, you can have it. You will be a big league manager if you really want to be one. And I think you should be one. But I need you to learn from this. I said, you got it, buddy. You got it. He's like, okay. And I mean that. You're one of the only smart guys I have. Like, I love Buddy Black. Katse was in that room too. Katse is the best. God, I love those two. Again, I've been spoiled being around some amazing baseball people. Like, I just talked about Buddy Black tearing me to shreds. I think I love Buddy Black more than almost everybody in baseball. Like, I love that guy. He's so great. I feel so bad that he's stuck in Colorado.
Yeah. So, okay. So why did Buddy Black get on you? What was the impetus for that? What happened?
I'll tell the story. So it was spring training. We had a player on our team who was, he was that one quote unquote bad apple. He caused a lot of problems over the years, and we were in big league camp, and we were playing in the B game before the regular game. We were playing at the Rangers. We played basically a doubleheader. And in this game, I was starting. It was like me, Carlos Quinn, and a few other guys, and that one player. And that one player, there was a ball hit over his head. He's playing left field, and he misread it, so he jogged after it. The ball goes to the wall, he jogs after it. The guy gets a triple on a routine fly out to left field. Guy gets a triple. Now, the guy should not have been standing past second base because he jogged. He did. And the whole major league coaching staff's here, and we're losing our minds. I'm just like, I've had it. And I'm like, good. I'm glad he did this in the big league game so they could see it. Finally, someone will put an end to this. We go to the major league game, the A game. He goes in the second, and he plays the rest of the game. And me and a couple other players were pissed. And I was really pissed. I was like, you're just going to reward this guy no matter what he does, huh? No matter what he does. Doesn't put up numbers, treats everybody terribly, dogs things, costs us games, and he's doing the big league games and still nothing. Like, I'm like, so that night I was out at the bar, a place called the Moon Saloon, which was the Padres bar at the time. And I was sitting there with Darren Balsley and Mark Kotze, who I'm very close with. Balsley was our pitching coach, Kotze our hitting coach at this point. And I'm just sitting there, and Kotze like kind of knows I'm still fuming about something. He saw I was pissed earlier. He's like, "What's going on, Dad?" I'm like, "You really want me to tell you?" So again, I just fucking went off on the whole thing. I'm like, years and years of this. I'm like, I'm sick of it. I'm like, I'm busting my ass, and you guys are rewarding this guy, and like that guy over there is busting his ass. He hasn't had a bat this spring. Like, I'm like, this is bullshit. And Kotz just goes like, yeah, it is bullshit. I'm fine. He was so happy that he's like, finally somebody's fired up. Somebody cared. So Buddy's like, I'm going to tell Buddy about this. Finally, he was so fired up. He felt like, he's like, finally somebody's going to take leadership and do. Kotz was really fired up. Goes and tells Buddy. Kotz comes and told Buddy all about it, dude. Let's go in his office. He wants to chat with us. It's gonna be great. I'm like, okay. So Kotze thinks he's bringing me in for a reward. I sit down. But Cody Decker, can you shut the door for me? Sure. Shut the door. Cody, how old are you? And right when he said that, I just went like, oh, shit. And I look at Kotz, and Kotz just smiling. He was so excited because he thought I was getting rewarded. It's like, oh, did anybody else have these thoughts? These same thoughts you did? I'm like, no, just me. No, I don't think that's true, Cody. I think somebody else had those thoughts. And I'm not gonna say the guy's name. I'll make up a name. Didn't Freddie say some things? I'm like, why don't you leave Freddie? I'm like, so I get outside. I go grab Freddie. Freddie, in the office, buddy wants to talk to us. It's like, what? I'm like, you and I are in a lot of trouble for some reason. He's like, what? I'm like, you and I are in a lot of trouble. Let's go we're in trouble. Let's go. We're both AAA guys, so this is not good. We sit down, and Buddy just lays into us hard. What do you think you know about managing players? What do you think that on and on and on and on? And he is not wrong, keep in mind. Because in his perspective right now, 2 AAA guys are questioning the big league manager. That cannot happen. That wasn't what was taking place. But in his perspective, that is absolutely what's taking place. And he is absolutely right to be mad about it. Granted, not taking place, but he thinks it is based on the information he's been given. So finally, after 10 minutes of him yelling at me, and I mean yelling at me, he finally just goes, Dick, if you were so mad, why didn't you do something about it yesterday, huh? And I just went like, do you want me to answer that, buddy? He's like, yes. I was told 2 years ago, last time I did say something to this guy, because he and I got into a fist fight over this exact thing in the dugout. And I was told that I was right by the front office, but because he's a high prospect, if I did it again, I would have to be punished. And he just goes like, what? I said, I was told that I could potentially be fired if I ever did it with this player again. And he just goes like, who told you that? I'm like, I cannot say that. He no longer works for this organization. And he just says, was it this guy? And I was like, yes. And he just goes, Freddie! And he went off on Freddie for 5 minutes. and I was just like, oh no. And then he gave us both the compliments. He gave that guy, Freddie, the compliment too, because Freddie was a very smart gentleman as well. But I'll never forget it. And Buddy later came up to me, which is why Buddy is who Buddy is. This is why Buddy's so great. He came up to me later and he's like, I want to talk to you. He's like, I think this is why I played him that game. I'm like, oh no, but you do not have to. Please, I am so sorry. You don't have to explain anything you do to me. And I'm sorry. It's like, no. It means it's important to me that you know this because I know you care. He's like, this is why. This is why. He's like, don't think for a second I don't have a lot of respect and love for you, Cody. And I was like, buddy, thank you. He's like, no problem. Right. You ever got a problem? And he even said this to me. He's like, if you ever got an issue, come talk to me. And I'm like, Buddy Black's telling me to come talk to him if I ever, like, this is awesome. Like, what a guy, tore me to pieces. And amazing. The look on Kotze's face looked like he gave like a deer in headlights when all this was taking place. He was almost tearful later. He's like, I'm so sorry. I threw you under the bus and I didn't mean. I'm like, you didn't throw me under the bus. Everything's cool, dude. Everything's fine. And Mark Kotze, you are the greatest man alive. We're gold. And I'm so happy. He's a big league manager now. Oakland A's, man. Yeah. Mark Kotze, where he belongs too. I mean, I look at that coaching staff that I had. I mean, really think about it. Bud Black managing in Colorado, Mark Kotze managing in Oakland, Dave Roberts managing in Los Angeles, Pat Murphy bench coach in Milwaukee. Like that coaching staff was ridiculous. So I again spoiled.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to follow up on that. How often does it happen where a high prospect gets coddled or gets more opportunities than a guy that might have been a mid-round draft pick that might be as good or better than that player? But
100% of the time. Yeah,
the front office or the coaching staff keeps rolling this high-profile player, this high prospect out. We can't show that we're wrong here.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I firmly believe this. I think there are all-stars and maybe even a Hall of Famer or two that we never heard of because they never got an opportunity at the big league level. And when we're talking about those prospects, it's not that the prospects don't deserve a shot to go to the big leagues. They probably do. But at the end of the day, it's guys like me. I was drafted in the 22nd round. I was signed for $638.43 after taxes. That is not a very big financial investment. And by the way, I think I led the nation in home runs at UCLA that year and hit like 330, and I had like 60 home runs at UCLA. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is a business, and the business, you have to make financial investments, and you have to justify said financial investments. And at the end of the day, if you're looking at your double A team and you're going to call somebody up, both these guys play right field. This guy is hitting 340. This guy is hitting 260. 260 guy has $3 million of investment in him, and he's one of our top prospects, according to Baseball America. The other guy was, senior sign. We got to bring up the $30 million guy. Also, it'll generate buzz around the fan base. Hey, they're finally bringing up the prospect. Think about somebody like Bryce Harper. At the time when Bryce Harper went to the big leagues, Bryce Harper never hit above 250 in his minor league career. And then he goes to the big leagues, and obviously Bryce Harper became Bryce Harper, who what they expected. And honestly, I think Bryce Harper is even more impressive than people give him credit for. And when I say that is not only is a two-time MVP, but he's a guy who honestly struggled in the minor leagues until he got to the big leagues. But also the amount of hype around Bryce Harper from high school all the way to the big leagues is impossible to live up to. And the fact that he's even come close to living up to that monumental hype I think they should erect a statue of him in multiple cities. Like to me, it's that impressive. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is a business, and you have to justify financial investment. And you're going to call up your prospects more than you're going to call up your farm hands.
Wow. And, kind of following up on that, I don't know how willing you are to talk about this, but you mentioned that there's not a lot of, or I guess Bud Black might've said this, that there's not a lot of smart baseball players out there. Like what is the percentage in a clubhouse of 25 or 26 guys that, man, these guys, okay, they got a good head on their shoulders. They're pretty bright versus just, I play baseball. That's all I do. I can't do anything else. Sort of.
Depends on the level that you're at. I'd say double A and up, you're going to have a lot more smarter guys.
Okay.
The lower levels, you're going to deal with a lot more high school kids and a lot more frat boys straight out of college that don't quite understand how the world, business, or anything works.
Right.
You're fresh out of college, you played maybe at a major university, and it's probably something along the lines that you think the world revolves around you, and you're in for a harsh reality. It's a very unique dichotomy in any clubhouse. But the higher levels, the wiser they are, and even the smarter guy, even the not smarter guys, wisen up a little bit.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean they're smart. It just means they pick and choose their spots.
Understood. Besides yourself, smartest player you encountered?
Good question. Smartest player I encountered, probably Nate Fryman.
Okay.
I'd say Nate Fryman, Ryan Lavarnway, actually, take that back. Almost my entire Team Israel team. That was probably the smartest baseball team that has ever lived.
Okay.
Just everyone. Harvard, Craig Breslow. Yale, Ryan Lavarnway. Duke, Nate Fryman. Did Josh Zeid also go to Duke? No, he went to Vanderbilt. We had another Duke player. We had UCLA. We had what's his name? Stanford. Who's the GM? Sam Fold. Where did Sam Fold go? He's the GM of the Phillies now. He was our center fielder. It's just everybody. Yeah. It was every single guy was an extremely smart guy. That team was ridiculous. But I'd say probably Nate Fryman be high up on that list. Okay. Sam Fold's high up on that list. Will Venable's high up on that list. Rocky Gale I'd put up on that list. A player named Jake Gobert that I played with, he's high up on that list. John Baker. Catcher John Baker played with him in the Padre organization. One of my favorite players ever. He is currently the head of the player development for the Pittsburgh Pirates. There are a lot of smart guys in this game. I make fun of baseball players being the dumbest of all the athletes, and they probably are. But there are quite a few smart ones littered in the bunch.
And I think Sam Fold now GM with the
GM
Phillies,
of the Phillies. Yeah, Sam Fold, what a guy! I just made a birthday message for him the other day. It was awesome.
Yeah, he's got quite a history here with the Tampa Bay Rays. Like he's sort of a folk hero in a way.
I'm actually very sad that I never got to play for the Rays. I really would have loved to have seen what they were doing. I would have loved to see how that minor league system works and how they pump the players up to the big leagues the way they do. The Rays are one of the two teams that I desperately wanted to play for and never did.
Did you ever get an opportunity, or it was just like, I can't, there's a better opportunity somewhere else that I think I can make it to the majors compared to where the Rays were at a particular time? I don't know if they had ever reached out to you.
To this very moment, I have never spoken to the Rays one time. That is not true.
Oh.
Thank you for reminding me. I have spoken to the Rays many times, but never about me.
Oh.
There was a member of the front office of the Rays who is no longer a member of the front office of the Rays who used to call me all the time about players and wanted breakdowns of players both on and off the field. I get those calls a lot. There was a member, but I always drove me nuts that I'm giving these breakdowns of these players. I'm like, why aren't you trading for me, Dick?
Right.
But they never did. I don't know. It's just somehow have never spoken to the Rays about me, not one time. I would have loved to have played for them though. The one thing I wouldn't have loved, but I don't know this for sure. I never had spring training. 10 spring trainings, not one in Florida. I got all of them in Arizona. And if you know Arizona spring training, that is wonderful. No travel. You're in bed every day. You're home every day by 5 at worst. It's the best. So spring training in Florida probably would have sucked. But outside of that, oh man, I just wanted to see what they were doing because the quote unquote Rays model is very real and I want to see it.
I feel like you'd be a great scout. I feel like you could really get in. No?
Oh no, I'd be a great scout. They just
because of like all the travel and the grind of it.
I don't want to travel and watch games and break down players and turn in reports that will get read. Like I'm no, thank you.
Okay. Or like some sort of kind of getting into the mind of a player. I feel like you could figure out pretty quickly on whether a player has it or doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, you can look in. I mean, the numbers are easy. Like that's the thing that people always talk about. Well, I hate when people use the phrase metrics or sabermetrics because it's this blanket word that that just people are using just to define everything, and that's not necessarily the case. There are specific numbers for specific things, and you got to take those numbers and apply them. Like the phrase, like when people bring up war, it makes me giggle a little bit. It's not that war is a bad stat. It's more just like war was created for people that can't look at Mike Trout and understand why Mike Trout is exceedingly good. Like I can just watch him catch one fly ball on a run and be like, that guy's unbelievable. This guy's special. That's all it takes. I mean, you could see the athlete, you could see the mental, you could see the baseball awareness. It just takes looking at them. And obviously the numbers help, but I like using the numbers to back up what I see or help me, make an adjustment of what might need to be done. I mean, it took me a while to get a team. Certain advanced numbers, teams don't like their players having them. At least they didn't when I was playing. It took me a while to convince the D-backs to share some numbers with me so I can make adjustments while pitch hitting. And I think it's just kind of part of the game. And I think it's honestly an interesting part of the game. But scouting, it's not so much scouting, it's the actual art of going to the games and writing scouting reports. I would never do amateur scouting, ever. I would never, ever do that. Pro scouting, maybe convince me to do pro scouting. But the thing is, I always wanted to be a big league manager. I always wanted to be more on field or in the front office. And the only problem is it feels like you have to go through scouting to go through to get into a front office. And I just don't know if I want to do that.
Interesting. Mentioned, you kind of talked about this a little bit as far as pinch hitting. Why is pinch hitting so difficult at the professional level, or I guess baseball in general? I don't know if people really understand why and how it's such a challenge for so many ball players out there.
Well, we'll start with it just in practicality. You ever get off the couch after sitting on the couch for an hour?
Mm-hmm.
How good are you at doing fast twitch movements in that exact moment?
Not very good. Not very well.
Okay, now do that. Now go face 98. It's hard. It's very hard. You're not physically prepared to do it, no matter what you do inside. You can go into the cage and take some swings, come back out. It's not the same thing no matter what. You're cold at that point. You got to get yourself as ready as you can, and you got to go up there and get ready for a fastball, which most likely, if you're pinch hitting, means you're going in late in the game, probably the 7th, 8th, 9th inning, possibly the 6th. But that means you're facing a reliever, which means the reliever is most likely a flamethrower throwing anywhere between 95 to 103 with probably a decent amount of arm side run and crazy spin rate. Most likely backs up with a slider, possibly a cutter. So you got a lot to deal with at high velocities, and you are not physically ready to do it because you haven't played in a couple of days. It's hard, very hard. And the honest to God answer to do it is get on the fastball, and that's it. You have to hit the fastball, and that is it. You got to pretend the guy has nothing else. And because at the end of the day, if he beats you with his best breaking ball, tip your cap. He deserved to get you out. If he beats you with a fastball that you could have hit, that's your fault.
So Matt Stairs is pretty good then.
Matt Stairs is unbelievable. Matt Stairs was so good. Like I feel like there's certain players that were so good that will never get their due. Matt Stairs is one of them. Almedo Signs. Do you remember Almedo Signs, the killer tomato?
I honestly do not know of him.
Almedo Signs was a pinch hitter for the Los Angeles Dodgers. This guy was a big, heavy Panamanian dude. Awesome guy. Absolutely raked. And I mean absolutely raked. Touched the ball, it went very far. Could not play defense anywhere, could not move, but you put him in that pinch hitting spot, he got you a run. So much so that his teammates built him a shirt, which was just said, deploy the killer tomato, and it was a tomato with his face on it at the end of a slingshot. Like, he was unbelievable what he could do. Pinch hitting is more or less, believe it, it's an art. And it's hard, and it's an impossible art to accomplish. So those players that you mentioned that are known for pinch hitting, they're the Bob Rosses of the world, man.
Is it similar in a way to be as far as designated hitter goes, a guy that had been so used to playing a position, and then is a DH one day, or is being told, hey, you can't really cut it as a first base or left fielder anymore. We got to move you to DH. Is that also sort of a similar adjustment in a way?
It was for me at first until I got better at it. Like, DHing was another thing that to me was like, because you're getting cold. So I ended up starting DH. When I DH'd, I started just living in the cage practically. Like, inning would end, I'd go inside and take some swings, kind of move around, and just constantly stay active. So when we were on defense, I was often in the dugout, but I would always leave the dugout for maybe a batter or two so I can move around like I'm playing defense so I can stay active.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of Theragunning. A lot of staying, activated. That is a tricky portion, and that's what I honestly would do when I pinch hit. When it came around, when I knew I was having a pinch hit day, especially those last 2 years, 5th inning rolled around, I went in the cage and I started working. Started getting off the tee, hitting, getting on my timing, looking at scouting reports of pitchers that I'm potentially going to face, and getting ready. Because if they were putting me into pinch hit, they're putting me into pinch hit to win the baseball game. I never pinch hit in a bat where I wasn't to either tie or take the lead.
Wow. Final question, Cody, because you've been terrific, and I think we've kept you probably longer than you expected. But and you have experience in this. The biggest, I guess, difference in competition between AAA and the majors, like how much of a shift is it going to the majors in the sense of, man, the game speed was fast, and now majors is like, man, this is a whole different level. Can you kind of put that in context a little bit?
Not much different, honestly. It's not. I would say AA, AAA, and the big leagues are roughly the same. They're all from those leagues. They maybe got a little bit better. Maybe the game got a little more crisp, but I wouldn't say there's much difference. I mean, I would honestly say AA was harder to play than AAA, because AA, you just got all the top prospects who throw the absolute shit out of the ball. That they don't want to put in AAA because they don't want to face the better hitters, which are all in AAA. So AA, you're facing guys that are throwing 101. They just don't know where it's going yet. They still haven't fine-tuned it yet. It's like you're going to face Kenley Jansen, but Kenley Jansen quite hasn't figured out his cutter just yet. 2 of every 3 is a very good cutter, but that one last one is not quite there yet. It's hittable. And then Kenley Jansen got past that and became Kenley Jansen. If you can play and be successful in AA, you can play in the big leagues for a long time. It's just opportunity and what's available to you. Those guys in the big leagues, they're not planning on going anywhere. There's only 25 jobs, and it requires them to either get hurt, which, if you're a minor leaguer, you don't want to sit around hoping somebody gets hurt. That sucks. They have to underperform. I don't really want to root against a guy doing his job. And lastly, it could be a trade or something like that, of which that I obviously welcome, but it also requires me to be playing very well at that moment too. So to say that there are a lot of moving parts to get you to the big leagues is an understatement. To keep you in the big leagues, that's something else entirely.
Wow. And then, okay, absolute final thing. If you had never played baseball, what would your career path have been? I think I have an idea, but what would you be doing full time or for your career?
Probably would have gotten into some sort of falconing, maybe some sort of cool sanitation job. I don't know. Maybe I like driving a lot. Maybe I could have been like a stunt driver. Oh God, a stunt driver would have been sweet. Hosting my own version of like Top Gear or something like that. What else could I have done? Could have been a mall security guard.
Okay.
I would have cleaned up at that job. I played one on TV once. That was cool. Got blown up. Got killed. Sick. NBC,
that was kind of the direction I was going, was full-time actor maybe, or something with Broadway or
10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I was a much better looking guy. Now, I couldn't get a comb through this 10 years ago. Now, it's getting thinner by the day. I'm in good shape, but yeah, I don't think I have the looks for it anymore. I used to, man, back 22-year-old this. Oh man, 34-year-old this is just, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, Cody, it has been a pleasure. Is there anything you'd like to promote or shout out or mention before we let you go here?
I would love it if you guys can, check out all my shows. Obviously, it's the off season right now, so my BetMGM MLB podcast powered by BetQL is not currently taking place, nor is down the line. But I am going to be doing a new show coming up soon. It's actually our old show. But follow me on social media at Decker6, and we'll be up to date with that. But more importantly than that, please check out my nonprofit, El Paso Border Youth Athletic Association. You can check out our website, borderyouth.org. Check out our social medias, EP for El Paso, EPBYAA. Where the whole goal of the organization is get as many kids into college through baseball and softball. Especially underprivileged families who, the game of baseball is exceedingly expensive. And I think I mentioned earlier today, the biggest problem to me that baseball actually has is nothing that's taking place on the field or between the Players Association. I think the biggest problem baseball actually has is accessibility. And especially accessibility to lower income families and people who want to learn and play this game. And I think it's important for Major League Baseball to make the game more accessible to the youth out there. And, they do have RBI programs, of which the Border Youth Athletic Association, we do have some RBI programs as well. But please check out everything that we have with the El Paso Border Youth. Even as something as simple as a retweet or sharing a link, it could change one of these families' lives. And, we just want to get as many kids into college as we possibly can and change the lives of a lot of underprivileged kids over there. Because again, I mentioned that I've been spoiled in this game. I've been spoiled beyond belief, just because of proximity of where I grew up. Growing up in Los Angeles, a lot of baseball players are here. This is a baseball-centric city when it comes to training and availability and accessibility. That doesn't exist everywhere else. My personal hitting coach was Reggie Smith, who was the hitting coach for the Los Angeles Dodgers at that exact time. Kids in El Paso, they don't have that, and I want to change that, and that's what my goal has been. And I want that paper lasts forever. Baseball ends for everybody, but that diploma is the thing that's going to last the rest of their lives, and that's the thing that's really going to change their lives.